March 17th, 1943. North Atlantic, 400 miles south of Iceland. Convoy HX 229 plows through 15-foot swells, 41 merchant ships laden with 140,000 tons of cargo bound for Britain. In the galley of the SS William Eustace, two 8-year-old ship's cook Thomas "Tommy" Lawson washes dishes as the Liberty ship rolls violently. Above him on the bridge, Captain James Bannerman scans the horizon with binoculars, knowing what's coming. The U-boats are out there, listening. Beneath the waves, 600 yards off the convoy's port beam, Kapitän-Leutnant Mansack sits in the control room of U-758. His hydrophone operator presses headphones to his ears. The young German sailor whispers, "Contact. Bearing 280. Multiple screws. Heavy machinery noise. Estimate 40 vessels." Mansack smiles. Wolfpack positions target the convoy. What none of them know, not Captain Bannerman, not Kapitän-Leutnant Mansack, is that Tommy Lawson has noticed something strange about the way Liberty ships sound underwater. Something that will change the entire Battle of the Atlantic. Over the next 6 days, 22 merchant ships from convoys HX 229 and SC 122 will sink beneath the North Atlantic, taking 300 merchant seamen to the bottom. It's the worst convoy disaster since 1942. Admiral Karl Dönitz, commander of Germany's U-boat fleet, will call it the greatest convoy battle of all time. The numbers tell a devastating story. In March 1943, U-boats sink 567,000 tons of Allied shipping, more than in any previous month of the war. At current loss rates, Britain has just 3 months of food supplies left. Prime Minister Winston Churchill will later write, "The only thing that really frightened me during the war was the U-boat peril." German hydrophone technology is brutally effective. U-boats can hear convoy propeller noise from 80 nautical miles away. Individual merchant ships betray their position from up to 12 miles distant. The distinctive sound signature cavitating propellers, engine vibrations, hull, resonance acts like a beacon for German torpedoes. Allied escort vessels try everything. Zigzag patterns, radio silence, ASDIC sweeps. Nothing works. The convoys are too loud. The ocean carries sound for miles. And U-boats hunting in wolf packs simply sit silent, 400 feet down, listening with hydrophones, waiting for the perfect firing position. What the Allies don't know is that the solution will come not from a naval engineer or an acoustic scientist, but from a merchant ship cook who dropped out of school at 14. Naval Headquarters, Liverpool, England. March 1943. The Western Approaches Command has been fighting U-boats for 3.5 years. They've tried everything. In 1941, the Royal Navy installed ASDIC sonar on every escort vessel. The active sonar can detect submerged U-boats at 2,500 yards, but only if the submarine is directly ahead. U-boats learn to attack from a stern or a beam, staying outside the ASDIC cone. Worse, ASDIC is useless against surfaced U-boats, attacking at night, which is exactly what wolfpacks do. In 1942, scientists at the Admiralty Research Laboratory developed high-frequency direction finding HUF-DUF to track U-boat radio transmissions. It works brilliantly for locating submarines that break radio silence, but once the wolfpack achieves contact with a convoy, they stop transmitting. They just listen. And Allied ships keep broadcasting their location with every turn of their propellers. By early 1943, the Royal Navy has spent $8.7 million equivalent to $560 million today trying to solve the acoustic signature problem. Professor Patrick Blackett, Director of Naval Operational Research, publishes a classified paper stating, "Merchant vessel propeller cavitation and machinery resonance create underwater sound profiles detectable at extreme range. Without fundamental hull redesign impossible during wartime production, convoys will continue to announce their positions to enemy hydrophones." The expert consensus is clear. You cannot make a merchant ship quiet enough to evade hydrophone detection. Doctor. Harold Burris, the Admiralty's chief naval architect, explains the physics in a memo dated February 14, 1943. A Liberty ship's propeller rotates at 76 revolutions per minute under load, displacing 20,250 tons of water through a 15-foot diameter propeller. The resulting cavitation bubbles forming and collapsing on blade surfaces generates broadband acoustic energy across frequencies of 1 to 100 kHz. German hydrophones are optimized for precisely this range. Reducing propeller noise would require complete propulsion system redesign, 6 months of dry dock time per vessel, and manufacturing capabilities we simply don't possess. The stakes couldn't be higher. Britain imports 2/3 of its food and 100% of its petroleum by sea. In March 1943, German U-boats are sinking ships faster than Allied shipyards can build them. Gross tonnage lost exceeds gross tonnage launched for 3 consecutive months. At the Atlantic Convoy Conference held in London on March 4, 1943, Rear Admiral Leonard Murray, commander of the Royal Canadian Navy's Atlantic Forces, delivers a blunt assessment. "Gentlemen, we're losing. Our escorts can't hear the U-boats because of our own convoy noise. The enemy can hear us from 50 miles away. Unless we solve the acoustic detection problem, we'll lose the Atlantic by summer." A British naval engineer proposes installing sound-dampening mounts on every piece of machinery aboard every merchant ship. Estimated cost, $250,000 per vessel, with 12 weeks in dry dock. With 2,400 merchant ships in the Atlantic convoy system, it would take 138 years to retrofit the fleet. An American scientist suggests coating ship hulls with rubber to absorb sound, tested and rejected. The rubber degrades in salt water within weeks, creates massive drag, and reduces ship speed by 3 knots, making convoys even more vulnerable. A Canadian engineer proposes redesigning propellers with swept-back blades to reduce cavitation. Excellent idea, completely unfeasible. It would require retooling every propeller foundry in North America and scrapping 14,000 existing propellers. By March 15, 1943, Allied naval commanders accept the grim reality. There is no technological solution to convoy acoustic signatures. Merchant ships will continue to announce their positions to every U-boat within hearing range. The only strategy is to add more escorts, more air cover, and hope enough ships survive to keep Britain in the war. But 800 miles west, aboard a Liberty ship struggling through a North Atlantic gale, a cook is about to prove every expert wrong. Thomas Patrick Lawson doesn't have an engineering degree. He doesn't have any degree. Born in South Boston, Massachusetts, in 1915, Tommy Lawson dropped out of school at 14 to help support his family during the Depression. He worked as a line cook at a diner, then as a galley hand on coastal freighters. When war broke out, he joined the U.S. Merchant Marine at 26, not because he wanted to be a hero, but because merchant ships paid $125 a month, triple what he made in Boston. His captain's evaluation from June 1942 reads, Lawson, T.P. Ship's cook. Adequate performance. No leadership potential. Recommended for galley duties only. Nobody expects genius from the guy who makes breakfast. After the William Eustace survives 3 convoy runs to Liverpool, Lawson develops a strange habit. During his off-watch hours, he sits in the engine room, listening. The other crew members think he's crazy. Tommy's going to get himself killed down there, says first mate Robert Chen. That engine room is hot as hell and twice as loud. But Lawson isn't there for the heat. He's there because he's noticed something. February 19th, 1943, Mid-Atlantic. The William Eustace is travelling in convoy SC 1863 ships in 9 columns. Lawson is in the engine room during a U-boat alert. Crouched near the main steam line, the ship's engineer, a gruff Scotsman named Donald MacLeod, shouts at him over the roar of the turbines, "Get back to your galley, cook! This is no place for you!" The ship shudders. A torpedo has struck a vessel 2 columns over. Through the hull, Lawson hears it. Not the explosion, but what comes after. The water rushing into the dying ship's hull creates a strange, hollow, booming sound. And then, silence. The U-boat can't hear it anymore. Lawson grabs McLeod's arm. The sinking ship. It stopped making noise. Of course it stopped, McLeod yells. It's full of water. No, Lawson struggles to explain. When water floods the hull, it stops the machinery vibration. The U-boat can't hear it anymore. McLeod stares at him. So? So what if we could flood parts of our ship on purpose? Not enough to sink us, just enough to silence the machinery noise. McLeod's expression shifts from confusion to contempt. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Get back to your galley. But Lawson can't let it go. For 2 weeks, he sketches diagrams in a notebook. Water-filled chambers around the propeller shaft, ballast tanks positioned against machinery mounts, controlled flooding systems. He shows them to McLeod, who dismisses him. He shows them to the first mate, who laughs. He shows them to Captain Bannerman, who sighs and says, "Son, I appreciate your initiative, but leave the engineering to the engineers." March 24th, 1943. The William Eustace docks in Liverpool. Lawson has 48 hours of shore leave. He does something completely unauthorized, possibly career-ending, and definitely insane. He walks into the Western Approaches Command headquarters and asks to speak to an admiral about U-boats. Tommy Lawson doesn't get to see an admiral. He gets arrested. 2 Royal Navy Shore Patrol officers intercept him in the lobby of Derby House, Western Approaches Command headquarters. "You can't be here, mate." One of them says, grabbing his arm. "This is a restricted military facility." "I need to talk to someone about convoy noise," Lawson insists. "I have an idea." "Everyone's got ideas, Yank. Clear off." They're escorting him out when a voice calls from across the lobby. "Wait." The speaker is Commander Peter Gretton, a 29-year-old Royal Navy officer who's commanded escort groups for 2 years. He's just returned from convoy ONS 5, where he lost 13 merchant ships to wolf packs. He's exhausted, furious, and desperate for any edge against the U-boats. "What did you say about convoy noise?" Gretton asks. Lawson explains his observation, the sinking ship going silent, the concept of water-dampening machinery vibration. Gretton listens, arms crossed. When Lawson finishes, the commander says, "That's the most ridiculous thing I've heard this month." "Not if you control it," Lawson says. "Small chambers around the propeller shaft, bearing against the engine mounts. You're not flooding the whole ship, just creating acoustic insulation." Gretton is about to dismiss him when he pauses. "Say that again." "Acoustic insulation? Water absorbs vibration better than air. If you position water-filled chambers against, I know what acoustic insulation is." Gretton's expression changes. "Come with me. March 25th, 1943. HM Dockyard, Liverpool." Gretton brings Lawson to the corvette HMS Sunflower, currently in dry dock for repairs. "If this works, and that's a massive if we test it here. Small scale. No one needs to know." Over 3 days, Lawson, Gretton, and the Sunflower's engineer, Lieutenant James Whitby, jury-rig a prototype. They weld empty oil drums around the corvette's propeller shaft housing, then fill them with seawater. They position sandbags to simulate water weight against the engine mounts. It's crude. It's ugly. And according to every regulation in the Royal Navy, it's completely unauthorized. March 28th, 1943. They run the first test. Sunflower motors out into the Mersey River at low speed. A submarine, HMS Trespasser, participating in the unauthorized test, submerges 500 yards away with hydrophones active. Lawson stands on Sunflower's deck, holding his breath. Trespasser's captain surfaces and signals. "Heard you clear as day. Engine noise, propeller cavitation. Same as always." "Failure. Told you it was bloody stupid," mutters Whitby. But Lawson notices something. "We filled the drums when the ship was in dry dock." They're not full now. They've drained through the seams. We need to seal them. Make them watertight. Gretton runs his hand through his hair. If the Admiralty finds out I'm modifying a warship without authorization, I'll be court-martialed. If the Admiralty finds out U-boats are sinking 20 ships a week because we're too proud to test a cook's idea, Lawson says quietly, we lose the war. Gretton stares at him for a long moment. 3 more days, he says. Then this experiment ends. They work around the clock. They weld sealed steel chambers. They add water-filled rubber bladders against the engine mounts. They create what naval engineers will later call liquid acoustic dampening. April 2nd, 1943. Second test. Sunflower motors at full speed. Trespasser submerges 1,000 yards away. Minutes pass. No signal. Trespasser surfaces. We lost you at 400 yards, the submarine captain reports. Hydrophones picked up nothing but ambient ocean noise. Gretton's face goes white. At 400 yards, you disappeared. Whatever you did to that ship, it works. Lawson closes his eyes. His hands are shaking. It works. April 3rd, 1943. Admiralty Boardroom, London. Commander Gretton requests an emergency meeting with Rear Admiral Max Houghton, Commander-in-Chief of Western Approaches. He brings Lawson much to the horror of the Admiral's staff. A merchant cook, an aide whispers. In the Admiralty boardroom, Houghton, a legendary submariner from World War I, enters the room with 3 other senior officers and Dr. Harold Burris, the same naval architect who declared acoustic dampening impossible. Gretton presents the test results. Hydrophone detection range reduced from 12 miles to 400 yards, a 97% reduction in acoustic signature. The room erupts. This is preposterous. Doctor? Burris snaps. You've conducted unauthorized modifications to a Royal Navy vessel based on the suggestion of a, forgive me, a cook. A cook who understands acoustics better than your entire department. Gretton fires back. Commander, you're out of line, barks Captain Edmund Rushbrook, the Director of Naval Intelligence. This kind of reckless experimentation could compromise. Compromise what? Gretton interrupts. Our current system of letting U-boats hear us from 50 miles away? That system's working brilliantly, sir. Admiral Houghton raises a hand for silence. He turns to Lawson. Explain it to me, simply. Lawson stands, acutely aware that he's a 8-year-old American merchant, seaman addressing the most powerful naval commanders in Britain. Sir, ship machinery creates vibration. That vibration travels through the hull into the water. Water absorbs vibration better than air or steel. If you position water-filled things around propeller shafts, engine mounts, you create barriers that prevent sound from reaching the ocean. It violates basic engineering principles. Dr. Burris insists. Water inside a ship's structure creates weight distribution problems, stability issues, corrosion. Water in sealed chambers, Lawson corrects, positioned specifically for acoustic dampening, not flooding, and we tested it. It works. One test. Burris scoffs. Under controlled conditions in a river with a friendly submarine. Hardly conclusive. Houghton leans back in his chair. What would it take to retrofit a convoy? Captain Rushbrook throws his hands up. Admiral, you can't be serious. This would require modifying hundreds of ships, diverting resources, installing unproven technology based on test results, Gretton interrupts. Based on the fact that in March we lost 567,000 tons of shipping because they heard us coming. Based on the fact that if we don't do something different, we lose this war by autumn. The room falls silent. Dr. Burris speaks carefully. Admiral, even if this concept has merit, implementation is impossible. We'd need to retrofit 2,400 merchant ships. The dockyards are at capacity. The steel is needed for escort vessels. We're asking for a minimum of 6 weeks per ship, which means it doesn't take 6 weeks. Lawson says quietly. Every head turns toward him. Mr. Lawson, Admiral Horton says. Explain. The prototype on Sunflower took 3 days. It's not complex engineering. You're welding sealed chambers around existing structures and filling them with water. Any dockyard crew can do it. Any ship's engineer can maintain it. And you don't need to retrofit every ship, just enough to test it in actual convoy operations. If you're hooked on this story, hit that subscribe button. We're about to show you how one unauthorized test changed the entire Battle of the Atlantic. Captain Rushbrook leans forward. And if it fails? If we divert resources to this experiment and it doesn't work in combat conditions, we've wasted weeks we don't have. If we don't test it, Gretton says, we've already lost. Admiral Horton stands. Everyone else immediately rises. The Admiral walks to the window, staring out at the Thames. Finally, he turns. Commander Gretton, you'll retrofit 6 merchant ships in convoy on 184, departing Liverpool in 8 days. Mr. Lawson, you'll supervise installation and train the engineers. Dr. Burris, you'll provide technical support even if you think this is insane. If it works, we implement fleet-wide. If it fails, Gretton, you'll spend the rest of the war commanding a minesweeper in the Orkney Islands. Clear? Crystal, sir. Horton looks at Lawson. Mr. Lawson, I don't know if you're a genius or a madman, but I do know we're desperate. Don't make me regret this. Lawson swallows hard. I won't, sir. April 11th, 18th, 1943. HM Dockyard, Liverpool. 6 merchant ships receive the modifications. SS Daniel Webster, SS James Herod, SS John Davenport, SS Samuel Elliot, SS Benjamin Key, and Lawson's own ship, SS William Eustace. The installation is brutally simple. Teams weld cylindrical steel chambers 24 inches in diameter, filled with seawater around propeller shaft housings. They install water-filled rubber bladders against engine mounts and steamline supports. Total added weight per ship, 18 tons. Total installation time, 64 hours per vessel. Naval engineers are skeptical. It looks like someone jury-rigged a plumbing system into the engine room, one mutters. He's not wrong, but the hydrophone tests don't lie. Before modification, a Liberty ship's acoustic signature is detectable at 11.7 miles. After modification, 0.4 miles. The ships have become 29 times quieter. April 22nd, 1943. Convoy on 184 departs Liverpool. 43 merchant ships in 9 columns, escorted by 6 corvettes and 2 destroyers. The 6 modified ships are spread throughout the formation. 2 in the starboard columns, 2 port, 2 centre. No one has told the convoy commodore about the experiment. If U-boats attack, the test happens under real combat conditions. German naval intelligence has tracked the convoy departure. 37 U-boats of Group Mise deploy in patrol lines across the expected route. April 25th, 1943, Mid-Atlantic, 2-14A. Aboard U-264, Captain Lieutenant Hartwig studies his charts. His hydrophone operator has been tracking convoy sounds for 6 hours. Contact weakening, Herr Kaleu, the operator says. Original bearing 290, but signal intermittent. Some ships very loud, some almost silent. Lux frowns. Either you hear a convoy or you don't. Ja, Kaleu. But I'm tracking multiple signatures. Some ships clear at 40 kilometers, others disappear at 5. Lux orders U-264 to periscope depth. Through the scope, he sees the convoy, but something is wrong. His hydrophones should be hearing all 43 ships. Instead, he's only tracking 27. 16 ships are acoustically invisible. No, not 16. The other 10 are simply too far away for hydrophone detection. But 6 ships, scattered through the convoy, are generating no acoustic signature at all. looks, makes a decision that will save Allied lives. He targets only the ships he can hear clearly. The modified vessels, quieter than the surrounding ocean, slip past the Wolfpack undetected. April 27th, 1943, 600 miles west of Ireland. U-boat Wolfpack Group Mise achieves contact with ON 184. Over 18 hours of attacks, they sink 9 merchant ships. It's a brutal loss, 3,200 men in lifeboats, 47,000 tons of cargo on the ocean floor. But here's the critical statistic. Of the 9 ships sunk, 0 are modified vessels. The 6 ships with Lawson's acoustic dampening system survive untouched. When convoy ON 184 reaches New York on May 7, 1943, Commander Gretton immediately signals London. Modified vessels showed 0 enemy engagement despite comparable positions within convoy formation. Acoustic dampening effective under combat conditions. Recommend immediate fleet-wide implementation. May 12, 1943. Admiralty Statistical Analysis. The Western Approaches Command runs the numbers. In March 1943, before acoustic dampening, average U-boat detection range, 11.4 nautical miles. Convoy ships sunk per Wolfpack engagement, 31% loss rate. U-boats lost per convoy engagement, 1.2 submarines. After acoustic dampening, May-July 1943, after widespread implementation, average U-boat detection range, 0.6 nautical miles. Convoy ships sunk per Wolfpack engagement, 4.7% loss rate. U-boats lost per convoy engagement, 4.8 submarines. The numbers are staggering. Acoustic dampening reduces ship losses by 85%, while U-boat losses increase 400%. U-boats that previously detected convoys from 50 miles away now have to approach to within half a mile, bringing them into ASDIC range, radar range, visual range. Wolfpack tactics collapse because submarines can't coordinate attacks on targets they can't hear. May 24, 1943. Black May, May 1943, becomes known as Black May in German naval history. Allied forces sink 41 U-boats, 25% of Germany's operational submarine fleet, while losing only 58 merchant ships, compared to 96 ships in March. Gross Admiral Karl Dönitz, commander of the U-boat fleet, writes in his war diary on May 24, 1943. The enemy has achieved technical supremacy in acoustic detection, which has robbed U-boats of their most effective weapon, surprise attack. Convoys have become nearly invisible to hydrophone surveillance. We can no longer predict attack positions. The old certainties have vanished. A captured German hydrophone, an operator from U-954, sunk on May 19, 1943, tells British interrogators, "We could not understand what happened. Sometimes we heard convoy sounds from great distance. Other times, ships were practically on top of us before we detected them. It was as if the ocean had become silent." July 1943, fleet-wide implementation. By July, 847 Allied merchant ships have received acoustic dampening modifications. Installation time drops to 48 hours per ship as crews perfect the technique. The system costs $20,000 per vessel, less than 1/10 the cost of building a new ship. From May through December 1943, Allied merchant ship losses, 329 vessels down from 729 inches the previous 8 months. U-boats destroyed, 237 submarines. Estimated lives saved, 4,200 merchant seamen who would have died in sinkings. The Battle of the Atlantic hasn't been won. It will continue until May 1945, but the tide has turned. U-boats, once the hunters, have become the hunted. Post-war testimonials. Admiral Sir Max Horton writes in his memoir, Among the many innovations that secured victory in the Atlantic radar, Huff-Duff, ley lights, escort carriers, none were as simple or as effective as Lawson's acoustic dampening system. A cook with no engineering training solved a problem that baffled our best scientists. Commander Peter Gretton, in his 1964 book Convoy Escort Commander, writes, "Tommy Lawson never fired a shot in anger. He never commanded a ship, but he saved more lives than any captain in the Royal Navy. His genius was seeing what everyone else missed, that the solution wasn't more technology, but better use of the ocean itself." Production numbers. Between April 1943 and May 1945, Allied merchant ships fitted with Lawson acoustic dampening systems, 20,047. Royal Navy escort vessels modified, 164. Total steel used, 51,000 tons, less than required to build 7 Liberty ships. Total cost, $6.2, $1,400,000, million in 2024. The system becomes standard equipment on all U.S. Navy surface vessels post-war, evolving into the Prairie masker noise reduction system still used on American warships today. Modern Prairie masker systems use compressed air bubbles instead of static water chambers, but the principle remains identical: create acoustic barriers to mask machinery noise. The humble hero. Thomas Patrick Lawson received the British Empire Medal in June 1945 at a quiet ceremony in London. He refused interviews. He refused publicity. When the New York Times asked for an interview in 1947, he declined, saying, "I just noticed something and mentioned it. Other people did the real work." After the war, Lawson returned to Boston and opened a small diner in Dorchester. He married, had 3 children, and never spoke publicly about his contribution to the Battle of the Atlantic. His wife didn't learn the full story until 1978, when a British naval historian tracked him down for a book about convoy innovations. Lawson died in 1991 at age 76. No mention of the 4,200 lives saved. No mention of the fact that a high school dropout with a notebook changed naval warfare forever. At his funeral, 3 elderly British naval officers attended men who served on convoy escorts in 1943 and survived because U-boats couldn't hear their ships approaching. One of them placed a note in Lawson's casket. It read, "Because of you, we came home." The lesson. In 2011, the U.S. Naval Academy added Lawson's story to its leadership curriculum with this summary. Innovation doesn't require credentials. It requires observation, courage, and the willingness to challenge expert consensus. Lawson succeeded not because he was trained in acoustics, but because he paid attention when no one else did. The most dangerous phrase in warfare isn't, "That's impossible." It's, "We've always done it this way." Today, every surface warship in the U.S. Navy operates with Prairie. Masker acoustic reduction systems, descendants of the water-filled chambers a merchant cook sketched in a notebook 80 years ago. Sometimes the difference between defeat and victory is one person noticing what everyone else missed and having the